England is littered with forgotten villages, some because local industry moved away, some ravaged by the plague or similar. Just 4 kilometres to the east of King's Lynn in Norfolk is the forgotten village of Bawsey, and the only part that remains to this day is the Church of St James. The once thriving village of Bawsey wasn't destroyed by fires, disease or being abandoned, it was instead destroyed by greed. The landowner in the 16th century decided that the land would be better served for sheep farming, and he set about evicting all of the tenants and razed the village to the ground, leaving no trace to this day apart from the ruinous chapel of St James. The Church of St James was actually still used all the way up until the 1770s, but there were reports in 1679 that its structure was already in decline and repairs were needed. Only 60 years after, its doors were closed, the roof had collapsed and it was well on its way to being a ruin, as depicted in this drawing by Robert Ladbroke in the 1800s. Norfolk has around 100 ruined churches, which is more than any other county in England. The area surrounding the church was thrust into the spotlight when a metal detectorist was convicted for detecting illegally on the site. This led to the realisation of the site's historical significance. In fact, the area surrounding the church has been an absolute treasure trove of discoveries, making it one of the most significant sites in England, with finds dating back around 4,000 to 5,000 years and constant occupation from the Iron Age until the village was destroyed. It was also the focus of a time team dig in 1999, where they managed to date the site. They uncovered a loom weight and Ipswich ware in the boundary ditch, giving it a date of between 720 to 850 AD, and a gruesome murder, but more on this in a moment. When the church was at its height, the promontory that it sits on would have actually been completely surrounded by water and accessed via a raised causeway. It appeared in the Domesday Book as Berwick, which translates to an outlying farmstead of a lord. It was under the name of Bawsey, which is an Old English place name meaning Gadfly Island, rather like St Michael's Mount in Cornwall. The nearby town of King's Lynn would have in fact been ocean at the time. The church that you see now was built in the 1130s on the site of a previous timber church. This new church was then extended several times, with the newest part, the chancel, being from around the 14th or 15th century. It was constructed in a Romanesque style using local carstone with the occasional flint or limestone dressings. The central positioning of the tower appears to have taken some influence from larger cathedrals or abbeys. Also, the east end of the church was not originally square. It was a typical round Norman style before it was modified. The area is awash with Norman history, as you'll find out in some future videos. Time Team found a burial that predated the Norman church, a heavily set skeleton that they initially believed to be male from the 7th or 8th century, but later analysis showed it was a female who had suffered a head wound caused by a swordsman on horseback. The piece of skull that had been separated because of the injury had actually been removed completely during a surgical procedure and reattached, so the person must have survived the injury and an early and certainly primitive form of medical help was offered. Time Team also found evidence of bone regrowth around the wound, meaning they must have survived for a period of time afterwards. They also found bite marks from a badger, which happened before the burial. So this poor person was not only attacked by a swordsman, but then, whilst laying injured on the ground, was then also mauled by a badger. Whoever this woman was, at that time the fact an attempt was made to save her would have meant that she was quite an important individual in some capacity. Surgery was not as expected as it is now. It was almost seen as an invasion of the body. Danish and Viking attacks were prevalent at the time, so it's possible it was a result of a Viking raid. And as we know, religious sites were often targeted due to the fact the village's wealth may well have been held at the church. This obviously can't be confirmed, but whoever she was, she certainly met a grisly end.